This is the new Top Pro from XENNS, and it might just be the new $500 benchmark. The overall sound is dynamic, balanced, clear with a slight crispiness in the treble. The Top Pro has that similar vibrant and contrasty musical playback like the Astros, but now it just has more micro detail and resolution in the treble. Basically, this is the Astro but on steroids, and it's a more technical version of the Astro and a direct upgrade to the Astros as well as the metas. What really stood out to me is the treble. It's not only very crispy but very clear, very resolving, and not artificially sounding or super sharp and fatiguing, giving you a very refined hi-fi sound. And this clarity works very well for female vocals. It gives them that sweet and angelic playback, no extra huskiness or a hit in the timbre, not overly forward, not recessed, at a perfect distance, not fatiguing or shouty at normal volumes because of the 5 to 6K cut, but still being very extended and open because of the gain from 1 to 4K being enough but not overwhelming. Technical performance wise, the Top Pro punches above its price category and actually competes around the $1,000 mark. Remember how people back then were saying the original Top was a mini Monarch? Well, the Top Pro is now just straight up Monarch level. If you have the original Top, the Top Pro is a cleaner, less sharp, and more sparkly version with a slight bump in the treble detail. Is it a huge upgrade from its predecessor? Not really. If you have the original Top, you don't necessarily need to upgrade, but it is a nicer and better set overall. The value to performance on this thing is pretty nuts. If you prefer a crispy and clear treble playback, something cleaner, this would actually be the better pick over the Monarch Mark 3s. It has similar detail, resolution, and layering, but the Top Pro comes across as more dynamic and contrasty, more sparkly and crispier in the treble, whereas the Mark 3s are smoother, airier sounding, and more ethereal in the presentation. However, low end wise, the Mark Bs are still more impactful and textured in the bass, especially in the mid bass region where the rhythmic section is more forward, it's more prominent, it's better highlighted than the Top Pros. The Top Pro has enough bass, but it can be mid bass light on genres like rock, metal, where the drums and the bass guitars can just feel a little bit too light and kind of disengaged in the overall mix. These still sound fine on those genres, but it wouldn't be my first pick when it comes to rock, hip hop, metal. I would actually take the Astros or the Odysseys over these when it comes to those genres, because the low end on those are just fuller, better texture, they're more forward, it has more slam, and the vocals also aren't as forward as the Top Pros, which also helps them to scale better as well. However, the upside to this tamer mid-bass region is that the layering on the Top Pro is actually slightly cleaner and better separated even than the Monarch Mark 3s, because it just pulls back the low end more and creates the perception of more space. There's just more room for the instruments to breathe, and the fact that I'm even comparing this to the Mark 3s, which is 2 times the price, should be a testament to how good these actually are. Now, scaling wise, the Top Pros are a mid to mid-high volume set depending on the song. For example, Model, Yoshika, Luna, tracks with more energy or treble emphasis will take a hit in the scaling because of the tamer mid-bass plus the highlighted treble. It kind of shifts the focus more onto the treble. I was able to get around 65 dBs on Model, which is a rock track that has a lot of cymbals, and I just couldn't crank it up any higher because the treble just got a little bit too overwhelming. On the other hand, slower and less energetic artists like Frank Ocean, Billie Eilish, the Mariahs, indie acoustics, those all sound great on these. I got up around 75 to 80 dBs depending on the track, and the female vocals especially are super clear on those genres. Overall, the Top Pros are still an all-rounder, and it just depends on the volume. For example, if you have a lot of K-pop, J-pop, EDM, hip-hop, then I would recommend listening at around 60, 65 dBs, and anything higher around 75 dBs would be indie, acoustics, classical, certain rock and metal tracks depending on the amount of cymbals. Tip-wise, I am using the Senkai regulars to tame the treble and upper mids a little bit because I do listen louder. It helps in my scenario, but any balanced tips will work, like the Ultra Clears, the Venus, and the #1 stock tips that it comes with. These all sound pretty good. If you want less upper mids and treble energy, you can go with the #2 stock tips or the Senkai wides. I just wouldn't recommend using tips that boost the treble like the Clarions or the Asla XENNS, because the Top right now has just the right balance as it is. Now for some comparisons versus the Arcanus, the Top Pro is overall just more technical. It has better detail, retrieval, and treble clarity. As an all-rounder set, the Top Pros would be my pick over the Arcanus. However, I do still like the Arcanus better tonal wise. It is still my pick when it comes to vocals, because even though the Arcanus might not have that crispy and clear treble, the vocals and the bite are just more unique on the Arcanus. Like the vocals on the Top Pros are solid, it's very clear, but they just don't give me the same intimacy and goosebumps as the Arcanus. Scaling wise, you can also crank the Arcanus more. It just has less upper mids, less treble. It comes across more immersive, more personal, and quote unquote more musical. But if you don't care about like the vocals and you just want the best value to performance at around $500, then the Top Pros would be the better pick in that regards. And compared to the Volare, the Top Pros are more energetic and dynamic in the treble. It's crispier, it's sparklier, it has a little bit sharper imaging in the attack. It's overall just slightly more resolving than the Volare, but not a huge difference. The Volares on the other hand has a smoother and airier treble presentation, kind of like the Monarchs, because of the ESTs versus the Newell Super Tweeters in the Top Pros. Low end wise, both are around the same in the texture. The Top Pros have a little bit more sub bass, extension, and rumble when it comes to like hip hop, EDM. It just has more quantity in that sense. Whereas the Volare is, it has more mid bass. It's filled in a little bit more. It's better when it comes to rock and metal and drums and bass guitars. All in all, both are great when it comes to value to performance, and it really just comes down to, do you want a more dynamic and like sparkly, crispy listen from the Top Pros, or a smoother and more neutral playback that's more filled in the mid bass. Next, versus the Oracle MK3s, the Top Pros is less bassy, it's less sizzly overall. It has like more clarity, a little bit cleaner in the layering. The technical performance is slightly better than the MK3s. Again, not a huge difference. If you're looking for more mid bass, the MK3s will still be better there. It just has better texture, it's more authoritative. When it comes to low end, it feels a little bit more engaging when it comes to the bass, as well as having good extension in the treble. But timbre wise, I would give it to the Top Pros because it just sounds more clear. It doesn't have that sizzliness, but it's still pretty sparkly at the same time. And as an all-rounder, I would prefer this a little bit more over the Oracle MK3s. However, versus the original Oracles, the Top Pro is less vocal centric because it just has more low end, it has more treble energy, it's more boosted, which results in a better balance across the regions. But this also means there's less elevation in the 1 to 4K region compared to the original Oracle. It just pops out less. Basically, if you're looking for a vocal centric set that's well balanced, clean, clear, that highlights the mid-range better, then the original Oracles is still the benchmark there when it comes to just like an all-rounder vocal set. However, if you just want the best all-rounder set in general, more contrast, more dynamics, more bass, more treble overall, like more detail, then that's where the Top Pro comes in. And similar to the original Oracles, the RS5 would also be the better pick when it comes to vocals because it just has more extension, more elevation when it comes to the vocal gain. It's more powerful, it's more extended, fuller in the mid bass, and just more forward in the vocal presentation than the Top Pros. The RS5 is still one of the best male vocals that you can get. It's still the GOAT in that regards. But when it comes to like detail, layering, Top Pro is better in that regard. It's a better balanced all-rounder set. It's less forward in the vocals. The treble is highlighted a bit more. It's crispier, and the vocals are still good. It's still clear. It's still enjoyable, but it's not gonna be a vocal centric set. Then finally, versus some bassier sets like the Audio Origin, the Punch, T-Pros, High Force, Estrella, the Meteor, stuff like that, the Titans, those are gonna be better when it comes to hip hop, rap, R&B, because the low end is just more prominent, it's punchier, it slams harder, they have more sub bass extension, they have more mid bass extension, right? You hear and feel the low end texture and impact better because they're just more of it overall. It's more focused, it's more forward in the mix, and if you want a bassier sets, all of those would be better than the Top Pros. Obviously, when it comes to technical performance, the Top Pro is still a step above all those with better, balance overall. It's cleaner, it's sparklier, it has better layering, has more detail in the treble, better resolution. Again, this is a great all-rounder set that's still dynamic and musical, but it just can't specialize in certain regions like the others mentioned above. With all that said, do I recommend the ZIIGAAT Top Pro? Yes, you are getting Monarch levels of performance at half the cost with great packaging and accessories on top, and as an all-rounder, I think the Top Pro is probably the best at $500 that I can safely recommend to pretty much anyone looking for an upgrade, you know, coming from the Chopin, the Nova, or even the Astros. Even though these aren't the most unique IEMs that I've heard, again, I do like the Arcanus better when it comes to tonality, the vocals, but these are still a fantastic release from ZIIGAAT, and give these a shot if you're looking to upgrade. Anyhow, I hope this review was helpful. I got the opposite of the Top Pros coming up next, aka the Moondrop Harmon or Harmon, so I'll see everyone in that next video. Shout out to Dom Q, Roark's Cat, Mystic Spoon Attack, B Urak, Discal Scaldus, Walker Standard, Patrick, User, Mr. Gorillas, Polly J, and Han Risto, Giseng Yon, Christopher Jackson, Name, Henry Claudia, Son of a Horse, Obi, Wizard, Frickalicious, Pappas R, Contain Guava Juice Gains, Trent Bakley, Forever New, Choco Norris 420, FKSRG, Treble Will Extended, 777 ZK, Cousin Fat, Oh Really, Georgios, Anthony, Julius Phillip, Dead Riddle, Bilha, Zane, Tamat, and Art Moore. Thank you guys so much.